Hey, what's going on, guys? It's No Shoes, and we're back with another one. And today we're going to be reacting to Writings on Disobedience and Democracy from Vinnie Paz. This is suggested by Kufuku Ice over in the Discord, so thank you, Kufuku, for the suggestion. And if you're interested in joining the Discord as well as getting access to extra content, check out the link in the description to the Buy Me a Coffee. You can support the channel there and check out all the extra stuff we got going on. But without any further ado, let's get right into this. Let's see what Vinny has to say. Let's see what Writings on Disobedience and Democracy is all about. And I also understand that this is the second part of You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train. So let's get it.
We ought to stop thinking that we must have military solutions to the problems we face in the world.
Yeah.
The solutions that we need are the solutions of
Picking up where we left
dealing
off.
with sickness and disease and hunger. That's fundamental. If you want to end terrorism, you have to stop being terrorists, which is what war is.
They told you world.
Okay, interesting. So we got a beautiful sample on the beginning there talking about the world, the way of the world, and how we keep finding terrorists, but we keep creating terrorists through war. And then Vinny pops in and just says, we picking up where we left off. Let's see where he starts from. I'm excited.
You have to stop being terrorists, which is what war is.
They told you World War II was a people's war. Logic should have told them it was imperialist war. 18 million served in the armed forces. 10 million more overseas. That's enormous.
Okay, interesting. Starting off with World War II says it was the people's war, but really it's an imperialist war, which I'm not going to get too much into, but I think it's an interesting point to make because you had Hitler, who was really trying to take over and expand Germany, which in my mind, that's imperialism. So we were trying to prevent that, but at the same time, you have all these world powers coinciding. Seemed like at the end, nobody really lost or gained land, at least as far as I know. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm wrong or missing anything, but let's keep listening.
10 million more overseas, that's enormous. 25 million workers paid for war bonds. All of the while people question why the war's on. There was an undercurrent of reluctance. There were underpublicized signs of resistance. Hitler's Germany was unspeakable evil. But let's discuss real quick what we did to people.
Okay, interesting. So we're getting to that point that I was getting to where it's like, look, Hitler was bad. Like, I'm not sure how you can really defend not getting into World War II, but especially after Pearl Harbor and everything, again, I don't know all the history there, but let's see what he has to say. Now that we're getting to that flip, Hitler was bad, but why is what we did worse? I have no idea.
Discuss real quick what we did to people. We opposed the Haitian Revolution. We turned Guam, Puerto Rico, and Hawaii into institutions. Pretended to help Cuba win freedom from Spain. This country built on the blood of other people's pain. Blacks was looking at it.
Okay, interesting. So I guess we did gain some territory is what he's saying. We got some of those Pacific islands. We took Hawaii, all that. I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued to see his mindset on this because I feel like this is a perspective that just hasn't really been expressed.
This country built on the blood of other people's pain. Blacks was looking at anti-Semitism in Germany and saw the situation here was mirroring it perfectly. We appeased Hitler all throughout the 30s. Only years later we pretended we was worried. Roosevelt was hesitant to be gritty and caused a resolution to be buried in committee. The main interest was never to stop fascism.
Interesting. So he's basically saying, you know, we kind of kept our hands off. We were committing our own heinous crimes back home against our own people. But I'm really looking for some concrete examples. I'm very intrigued by this.
To be buried in committee. The main interest was never to stop fascism, but advance an imperial interest of that prism. Roosevelt didn't care about oppression of the Jews. The power was priority, I'm telling you the truth. Hitler not the reason that we entered the land. Roosevelt was mad that we got hit by Japan. Historians will tell you he provoked that shit. He told lies and attempts to sugarcoat that shit. In 40.
Okay, interesting. So I love the vocal that's coming in over the top. Beautiful, nice and lacy, add some atmosphere, a little bit more emotion to the track. But then we also get him saying that at some point in time, Roosevelt instigated Pearl Harbor. He's saying it was not just, Japan picking us because they just wanted to scrap. Apparently, we did something that caused that. Do y'all know what that is? Because I have no idea.
Provoke that shit. He told lies in attempts to sugarcoat that shit. In 45, troops were jammed onto the Queen Mary. The blacks were stowed down in the depths of the same ferry. See, there's a parallel you have to understand. That they wanted them to fight but wouldn't treat them like a man. Industrial mobilization had a few divided. The economic royalists denounced and derided. The irony of victory was heavily priced. The war ended, 3 million men wasn't strike. It's no peace in the world.
Yeah, and then talking about the irony of war, you get the prize, but after so much loss, so much hurt, so much pain caused to the people, what is worth it? How do we draw these metrics up? How did we decide that it makes sense to go in and do something like this?
The war ended, 3 million men wasn't strike. It's no peace in the world of capitalism. Nazi eugenics, economic rationalism. The lesson was that war solved problems of control, regardless if it causes any problems for the soul. The black revolt in the 50s came as a surprise. It shouldn't have after we took so many of their lives. You can't erase the memory of an oppressed people. Reparation doesn't make it any less evil.
Okay, interesting. So I'm trying to get where he's going with this exactly. And I feel like he's saying that in World War II and then this transition that there was a disproportionate amount of black people lost to casualties overseas and at home as well. And then now, because of that resentment, that oppression, that revolution came in the 50s. But let's see where it goes. This is a very interesting timeline that he's putting together.
Oppressed people, reparation doesn't make it any less evil. Some black folks joined the Communist Party.
And I mean, that's a big fact, man. Money, it doesn't fix what happened. It might make people feel better in the present, but sending out some checks, whatever the reparations manifest as, it doesn't make it better what happened. Just might make it a little bit easier to swallow. I don't know.
Doesn't make it any less evil. Some black folks joined the Communist Party. Richard Wright spoke of disillusionment with the party. The party was accused of exploiting black people. Angelo Herndon felt everything was equal. He was arrested and convicted for insurrection. How the fuck it's insurrection? I call it dissension. Gave him 5 years when all he wanted was protection. There was other black men that made the same connection. Benjamin Davis defended.
I really like the way the beat's evolving as we go through too. A lot of the time with these long songs, it feels like artists kind of just are like, oh, we'll make it, the same beat over the whole thing, and then we'll change what we say, and that'll be what makes it interesting. But Vinnie, he almost kind of stays as our anchor while the beat changes around him, almost as if the lens we're seeing the world through is the same, and it's watching the world change, which is a very apt way to make a track about something like this.
When all he wanted was protection. There was other black men that made the same connection. Benjamin Davis defended Herndon as a savior. Then Paul Robeson, he only magnified the danger. Harry Truman had to deal with the militant mode. But how the fuck that gonna work when he erased his soul? In 54 they said they ended segregation. 10 years later, no changes. Revolt was always minutes away.
Okay, interesting. So now he's talking about how segregation was ended, but then 10 years later, there weren't really any changes after that. It was a false promise left unfulfilled.
But how the fuck that gonna work when he erased his soul? In 54 they said they ended segregation. 10 years later, no changes. vote was always minutes away, about to bust. Rosa Parks refused the black section of the bus. The Freedom Riders were spreading across the nation and went to jail for marching and fighting discrimination. FBI stood by, Justice Department stood by, while civil rights workers were beaten, they just stood by. 3 civil rights.
The beat, love the change here. It's just a tiny bit too much. Vinny and the beat are overlapping just a tiny bit, maybe in their frequencies. I think we could pull his voice out just a little bit more from this section and keep that uniform feel that the track has had so far.
Justice Department stood by, while civil rights workers were beaten, they just stood by. 3 civil rights workers, 2 black and 1 white, arrested in Philadelphia, Mississippi one night. They were released, beaten with chains and shot to death. There were arrests made, but it was not confessed. The national government remained silent. The president wouldn't defend blacks against violence. Civil rights laws were passed, but they were fraud.
Okay, so again, it sounds like we're coming back to, I didn't catch it exactly, maybe it was police or even the National Guard, something along those lines. Was, there was violence. They were being violent towards African Americans, and it just wasn't going well. There was this facade of, oh, yeah, Uncle Sam, we want to help. But then there was the underneath of that grimy underground where oppression, violence, and all included in that were able to keep going and keep growing.
Remain silent. The president wouldn't defend blacks against violence. Civil rights laws were passed, but they were fraud. Equality was enforced, polio was ignored. Martin Luther King's speech thrilled whoever heard it. 5 years later, he was targeted and murdered. In 65, the Watts riots burned into the street. The black man would no longer turn the other cheek. The Black Panther Party scared.
I like that. That's a nice shift on turn the other cheek. Would not turn the other cheek, said, okay, it's time. We've seen what y'all been doing. We see how y'all be treating us. It's time for us to finally stick to our ground, stick to our guns, and make sure that these promises are being followed through on.
The black man would no longer turn the other cheek. The Black Panther Party scared Nixon, but that did nothing to change his position. A new black consciousness was born and still alive, and that came from the will to survive. This is the part where I would talk about Vietnam, but me and Rugged Man, we already made this song. By the 70s, distrust is spread across the nation. Basic discontent, political alienation. 55,000 died in a war of moral shame, and then Watergate was added to the Hall of Pain. The Watergate.
Okay, so we're sticking around the Nixon time period right now. I was talking about the pain, again, the violence, both overseas and at home, which is really interesting because this seems to be more relevant to the African American experience, but in a wider sense, I watched a documentary actually made by a professor that taught my documentary class this last semester about the Kent State shooting called The Day the 60s Died. It was made for PBS, I believe. Very interesting documentary, goes into a lot of the details and shows, again, that facade, the kind face being shown to us as the people on the TV and in, the public, and then those ulterior motives that were floating underneath.
5,000 died in a war of moral shame, and then Watergate was added to the Hall of Pain. The Watergate burglaries was rather complicated, but in the end, mostly all of them exonerated. Nixon had CIA and G. Gordon Liddy lie about the Democratic National Committee, but eventually they all flipped on him and told the Senate that they had a lot of shit on him. After that, it was a...
That's facts, man. I like that. It's like, look, they had a lot on him, and then one day they all just flipped and let it all out the bag.
Committee, but eventually they all flipped on him and told the Senate that they had a lot of shit on him. After that, it was a swift and a sudden fall. Nixon resigned before they could impeach the ball. They got rid of Nixon, but they kept the system. His foreign policy still remains in position. Corporate.
Exactly, and that is one of my biggest issues with the government, the media, and the world we see around us is Oh, who are you voting for? You're gonna vote, right? It really matters. It's the same system. We got two sides of the same dirty ass coin, and we keep putting people in there that come from these same parties and saying, oh, this time it will work. Stop. It is foolish. It is an act of insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And that's what we do every 4 years in this country. And it's pitiful. It's pathetic to watch, honestly.
The ball, they got rid of Nixon, but they kept the system. His foreign policy still remains in position. Corporate interests still remained in position. His closest advisors remained in position. Vietnam, recession, and unrest all adds up to a motherfucking mess. After Watergate in Vietnam, there was a deep economic insecurity in this world of ours.
Also, the piano on that last section was absolutely beautiful. And then we're getting like 3 or 4 separate sections here. We're coming back to this guitar heavy riff. I really like the transitions.
After Watergate in Vietnam, there was a deep economic insecurity in this world of ours. Environmental deterioration took its toll. A cultural violence and broken families took its toll. Problems couldn't be solved without bold changes, but no major party candidates proposed changes. American political tradition held fast. Urban communities turning into hell fast. Black
Facts, and kind of just what we were talking about. The American political traditions were held fast. Regardless of all this change and thought of revolution and this distrust and disgust with the system that we currently follow, we just went right back into it. And we kept following along and we kept voting and we kept listening and thinking, oh, this guy said he wants to be different. So that means he is. And that means he'll be able to do what he says he will. Or she will. We haven't had a female president yet, but it'll happen eventually, I'm sure.
tradition held fast. Urban communities turning into hell fast. Black folks are bitterly disappointed with Carter. Opposed federal aid to poor people. Didn't bother. Reagan got elected and he built the military up. $1 trillion later and his motherfucker dummy up. He cut benefits for the poor to get the money up. Social security disability went belly up. Unemployment grew in the Reagan years. 30 million people unemployed in the Reagan years. Welfare.
Wow. And again, you know, we hear just painting a very different perspective of the reality we all get taught in school. And, you know, the thing about like Reagan and Reaganomics and all that nonsense. But underneath it all, there just this level of uncaring and being unhelpful to those who actually need the help. There's so much going on here. I'm starting to lose track all the threads, so don't mind me, but amazingly well put together track.
Social security disability went belly up. Unemployment grew in the Reagan years. 30 million people unemployed in the Reagan years. Welfare became an object of attack, especially if you was Latino or you was black. I'm just scratching the surface of what was wrong. We'll pick the conversation up in the next song.
Hey.
To be continued. You can't be neutral on a moving train. I told y'all before. You can't believe everything that your teacher tell you.
Okay, great, man. So now we're in the outro. It says, look, we'll pick it up on the next track. Y'all just wait. Make sure you study, do your homework, listen to this a couple more times, and we'll be back soon. Beautiful, man. Let's keep it going. Since we're already hitting that section, I wonder what we're going to do for the last, 50 seconds here, but we'll find out by listening.
I told y'all before. You can't believe everything that your teacher tell you. Who was your teacher? Your teacher just learned what they was taught. How do you know what they was taught was correct? Yeah, man.
That is a great point. That is a great point. Like, you know, we look at our teachers and we have this respect and this understanding that like, oh, they're teaching me the way things actually happen. It's really they're teaching us stories that they were taught, that were taught to somebody else by somebody else, written down by somebody else, and we have this gigantic game of telephone just translating our history down until now we're at, it's 2023 and you still got the same classrooms with same teachers, new teachers, doesn't matter, but the stories are just past, 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 past. And as we all know, history is won by the victor.
Yeah, I mean, dig into the real history of this country and the fact that it was built on blood. We gonna go around for a third time, but for now I'm just blessing y'all with this one, a continuation of the first. You can't be neutral on a moving train. Pazienza.
Pretty nice outro here. Excuse me. Just right now, without even fully finishing it, I think we could have compressed this bit and just made it a little bit more of a short and sweet outro. Would have left the original message of this song a little bit more untouched and a little bit more clear. But we only got a couple seconds left. Let's finish it out.
And thank you for teaching the people. Rest in peace. It's Pazienza, baby.
All right. Well, that was beautiful, guys. I really enjoyed that. I hope y'all did as well. Again, thank you to Kufuku Ice for suggesting this track. That was Writings on Disobedience and Democracy from Vinnie Paz. Let me know in the comments down below what y'all want to see next time. If you're interested in joining the Discord, check out the link to the Buy Me a Coffee in the description. Much love to everybody in the No Shoes gang. Make sure y'all hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell. And I will see you all next time.